Yeah, 3:15 will be the coffee break. So we have a good 15 minutes, and bear in mind that Mr. Kher will need 5 minutes just to, respond to all the points. I think most of the points have been addressed to him, and given the fact, given his previous functions in the government of India, I would rather that he concludes it actually, rather than me. Any questions from the audience?
Yeah.
Can we go from the back? Yes, please.
Yes. My name is Arvind Kumar, and some of the questions which were raised by the panelists, they did not answer. So I will attempt to answer. First is about India's negligible participation in global value chains.
Mm-hmm.
And the question I raise, I will just give some common sense examples, which I give quite often. You see this vegetable market, which is just half a kilometer away from Habitat Center. If you visit, imported apples you get it are for 180 rupees a kg, and apples from Himachal you get for 160 rupees a kg. Why this narrow difference? It is the logistics cost. Because these apples are imported from Chile and Washington by huge container ships to Singapore, and then they are airlifted to Indian metros. Whereas the apples from Kinnaur are brought by trucks, and the freight cost is prohibitive.
Yeah.
And if you compare the freight cost, ton kilometers, the freight cost for imported apples happens to be much lower. And imported apples are subject to 50% duty. If this is true for our apples, I think the same thing holds for our manufacturers. Another point I would like to, this is very high logistics cost. The second important factor is working capital. Because you see, China, a recent report which was submitted to US Senate, because President Donald Trump was hell-bent on dismantling the US Exim Bank. And when he was told that every year now China is disbursing $100 billion worth of credit, $50 billion for long term, and 50 is trade credits. And you see, most of the countries in ASEAN are availing of these trade credits, which are at a very, very negligible, hardly at 1%. How you compete? Third factor, I would say that for last 10 years, India's peak MFN rate is 10%.
Mm-hmm.
How do you negotiate with a countries which have 3 to 5%? Next question I would like to answer is why FTA utilization is very low in case of India. One simple reason is that in most of the Asian countries and in Korea, it is self-certification, and you have just 1 or 2 import tariff rates. In India, we have peak 10, but we have about a dozen. So for any exporter or importer, to compute value addition is a nightmare. So the fellow doesn't opt for preferential window. He says it is better to export through the normal channel where he faces a higher tariff. And third, I have forgotten, one was a low utilization rate of FTA, other was this...
value chains you've already addressed. Yeah. But thank you that the last point that you mentioned was a very practical one. I wasn't aware that merely the cost of bureaucracy is so much that you would rather export it through the normal route, is it? But thank you for the clarification. Mr. Kher, I have one more question to add. For the last 20 years, we've been talking about cold chain storage. 30-40% of the vegetables and fruits rot in India. This is not a new phenomenon. What is preventing us from investing in state-of-the-art cold chain storage? If you can answer that towards the end. We'll give it to our ASEAN friend and then Professor Day. Please, you wanted the floor.
Thank you. Sutipan from Thailand. I enjoy very much this session. In addition to what we discussed this morning, the very strong interaction of people from, particularly the Indian side. We have also ASEAN friend. And sitting down here, try to make sense of that's ASEAN India FTA, so for my understanding, of course, I used to have the contact with Professor Batra, also the economist, pushing back, to understand the official and the business side. So I think it's, that's India is a big country, of course, and then dying difficulty with doing away with protectionism, and that we try to understood, and also that part of the perception. Some of you might would like to talk about it. That's making the other side of ASEAN, that's our efforts to discuss and this kind of perception is not going away from ASEAN. I think very important that we need to change that. And you're right to mention, I don't know that ASEAN is different because ASEAN already started AEC 2015, and we have our own progress. And even big or small, from Indonesia to Laos and Cambodia, even Brunei, and colleagues known. This year, next year, intra-ASEAN territory, even the CML will be relatively free. In addition to the connectivity, the three connectivity at least East-West Economic Corridors, North-South Corridor that link it to China, Southern Economic Corridor, and continental ASEAN in addition to maritime ASEAN. So my point is we doing away, even small and of course and that's how the value chain. I'm not here to teach, but the experience of perhaps a small and medium size of ASEAN, and looking at the broader picture and looking at the regional opportunity. Of course, there is an adjustment to be done at the country level, and this is going to happen. There's a lot of things, and you look underground. Even Vietnam, colleagues have talked this morning. It's if you look at Vietnam and China, and also China this year, we doing away also another round of tariff cut of so many items. Thailand head newspaper deadline the other day saying EV cars, Thailand EV car policy, which we do with the Japanese and Korean, have now to compete with completely built up charge from China. So what to do? This kind of adjustment. We already at that stage of Korean and Japanese car building between Vietnam and Thailand, and to compete with the Chinese. So my point is even Vietnam, the trade deficit with China is greater with the whole ASEAN-India trade deficit. I don't know. For me, and looking at the kind of try to make sense of the FTA model, the ASEAN-India FTA model. I try to think about it and listen to all of you, and I think, hoping to get the light and the chair particularly pushing us to express, I think is merit attention, and this is very important to put the other half glass of full. And be moving from 5 years from now. I better stop here. Thank you.
No, thank you. Lest you get the wrong impression, this is the way we normally talk among ourselves. Huh? I just want to make sure that you don't go away with the impression we are fighting or anything. But you must understand also that there is a public perception problem in India with regard to FTAs, which is why I struggle to I'm really clinging at a straw here when I talk of the gains that India may have made in terms of global value chains or regional value chains after signing the FTA. It would be good to have that, at least for a few products, if we have made significant gains. Because otherwise, without any connotation to what she said, the view is what you're hearing. Professor Amita Batra is absolutely spot on. The general view you get is that, listen, this is a bum deal. Why the hell did we sign it? That's the view you will get. But I think there could be a hidden truth somewhere. Number one. Number two, you have the industry saying there is no option anyway. Everybody else is doing it. In the WTO, India was one of the last countries to get onto this FTA bandwagon. And Jayant, I hope you agree with me, one of the worst mistakes by WTO was to bless all FTAs without sufficient scrutiny and examination. Every FTA which was reported to the WTO, I don't think WTO has ever rejected an FTA. Whereas I sincerely believe some FTAs ought to have been rejected because they were trade diverting more than trade creating. They were against the principles of WTO. But then, European community and others got on to it. So we were one of the last people to jump onto this bandwagon. As our industry says, we were left with no choice, really. You can't just say, I'm going to be outside this global trading system. We can't do that. But if there are no more questions, sorry?
I have a question.
Please. I am sorry, Professor Day as well, but anyway.
Okay, she said it's a bomb deal. You say why this happened, right?
I don't think I use the word it's a bomb
Okay,
deal.
so Mr.
No,
Mohan,
bomb deal was my expression.
Okay, right. Okay, you said there is a bomb deal. This was a bomb deal. Why it happened? So why not fix responsibilities and punish the people who really did this? Because something of similar kind is again going to happen. I mean, we are heading towards that. Here. I'm standing here, sir, in front of you.
Yeah.
Right. So something of similar kind is again going to happen, and if you really want to stop that, so really fix the responsibility on the people
what if I said to you
Right.
that the bum deal was vastly superior to a no deal? How would you react?
No, I don't.
You
no
don't
deal,
agree
No
because-
deal is better than
No,
bomb.
that is simply not true. That is not an option. That is the whole point I've been trying to make for half an hour. Just staying away from the multilateral trading system is not an option. Okay?
Okay.
It's not an option. Are you going to live outside the global trading system? You can't.
Okay, I give you a very good example.
We tried that, by the way, for the first 30 years.
Okay, I'm giving you one very good example. 95% of the India's seafood is exported in raw form. That
Okay.
is just they put it in the big containers. I'm giving you an example of Japan.
Right.
Few Japanese companies import big, seafood items. They put it in the container, take it to Bangkok, Thailand. They process it there, pack it, and export it to Japan. The same thing, processing and packaging is done here, value added is done here. There can be huge employment opportunities, there can be huge, government can earn a lot, and everybody good. But it doesn't happen. Why?
Why? Tell me. Sorry?
Nobody wants to do it.
Listen, that cannot be a valid explanation. Nobody wants to do it.
No.
That is not an explanation at all.
I can
If
put
there
you
is
to the
money to be made, trust me, an Indian will do it.
No.
Okay?
No.
Don't tell me nobody is interested in doing it. If there is a market, they will do it. There is something else which should be the right answer to the question.
Okay, so you find out. There is a big,
that's what we are trying to
researchers and
find out.
RIS find out, right? Why they are not doing it. Exporters themselves are telling, we want to do it, but we can't do it, right? So this is the question.
You sound like philosopher, sir.
No,
anyway, anyway, thank you.
No, sir. I am just putting in a question to experts
To
here.
me,
If
yeah,
this
to
is
the-
it,
yeah.
if this is happening, I'm saying, right?
Okay.
And exporters, they are saying we don't want to do it. Why? You tell me. I'm giving you facts. You can check, right?
Okay, fine. You will get an answer. Jayant?
2-3 points. The first one you mentioned about FTAs, going through WTO scrutiny. I hope you realize that the WTO has become terribly dysfunctional. It doesn't take any decisions, and it has got nothing to do with the Buenos Aires meeting. Because of the dispute settlement system itself, one of the fallouts has been that people have become very, very careful. So no decisions are taken in the committees. The WTO constitution had conceptualized that negotiations in future would take place in the committees. We had to go in for a round. But suppose we forget that Doha round was there. Do you think conceivably that we can have negotiations in the committees in the WTO? No. So, all FTAs would have got stuck at the WTO level if we had allowed for any scrutiny. Two, there were big countries like the EU, economic partnership agreements, which are terribly one-sided.
Correct.
The EU would never have allowed a scrutiny of its FTAs.
I agree with you.
Such as they are. Three, the US and a few other countries were talking all the while about gold standard agreements, like NAFTA and whatever. And they were against the enabling clause FTAs. So that would have been a huge problem for countries like India. So that is there. As far as the ASEAN FTA is concerned, you know, RIS has done studies. Dr. Sheshadri has done very good analysis. We would have been worse off if we had not had the FTA. But
I hope the gentleman back is
Yes.
listening. Please address it to him.
no, I will also address
Please
one of
listen.
the points which he mentioned about.
By the way,
false
for those of
findings.
you who don't know, Jayant Das Gupta was a former Indian ambassador to WTO. Jayant, go ahead, please.
So the issue is whether we have been able to extract the full benefits of the FTA. We have not. But I'm sure if you carry out an analysis on the part of the ASEAN countries, they would also say they have not been able to achieve full potential, extract the full potential of the FTA. So a lot of effort needs to be put in, and infrastructure and the other issues which have been mentioned, they have played a role. As far as fixing the blame on people is concerned, FTAs are not done by the Commerce Ministry. The time when the FTA was signed, in any case it needs cabinet approval. But before that, when the FTA with ASEAN was signed, there was a three-level clearance. One was the Trade and Economic Relations